When you go to those places and you see dark-skinned black people, even in places like Qatar and Bahrain and Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates, the original people in all of those places in the so-called Middle East are dark-skinned African people. Now, they have somehow usurped an identity that was originally African, that is not even part of the conversation today in looking at the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And because Minister Louis Farrakhan has been teaching for the last 6 decades of the fact that African people were the original Jews, the original Hebrews, the original Israelites, the original inhabitants of all of those regions, he has been branded by the European Jews as anti-Semitic. But in truth and in fact, any African person, theoretically, based on the historical accuracy of the anthropology, is more Semitic than those who are doing the accusing. So, based on these false charges of anti-Semitism against Minister Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, on October 27th, 2023, officially announced that they will be taking out a $5 billion lawsuit against the Anti-Defamation League, which is the major Jewish authority that seeks to ensure that there are not offenses or violations of rights of Jewish people. Now, if you go on the website, noi.org, you will see the letter explaining the claim, and then there's a number of links below: Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, Exhibit D, E, F, G, A whole long list of exhibits. And each one that you click on opens up an average of close to 100 pages each of press statements, newspaper articles, media releases, accusations, news reports over the last few decades, accusing Minister Farrakhan of being against the Jews and being anti-Semitic. And the timing of this, after all those decades of those false charges, because the minister has never, not even once, called for or supported any kind of harm to Jewish people or anyone else for that matter. His only crime, as far as the world is concerned, was that he identified that black talent, our sports figures, athletes, entertainers, our singers and writers, and those with multi-million-dollar successful careers have been in a stranglehold type of relationship with members of the Jewish community who own dimensions of the industry. It is not hate to tell your brother, pick up yourself, beloved, and do for self. Become empowered. If you're encouraging your brother to do better with his life, how does that translate into hatred for those who have chains around his neck? Now, let's look at this even closer and think. The Bible explains these 12 tribes of Israel all coming up out of Africa. They were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Dinah, who was the daughter, Joseph, and Benjamin. Now, from the 12 sons, you have the 12 tribes. All of them African people, coming from their father Jacob, who was African, from his father Isaac, who was African, from his father the prophet Abraham, who was not only African, but the first Jew. According to theological studies that have been universally accepted in both Islam and Christianity and Judaism. So you're talking about one of multiple lineages of African people coming out of the Holy Land at a time before there was any European or light-skinned migration into that region. Now, let's look at this image, and if we could get this on full screen, that would be great also. This is a theological, historical, biblical map that shows you the settled regions in the area today known as Palestine and Israel, or the Gaza on the left and the West Bank on the right. And this image here shows you historically where the 12 tribes of Israel settled. Judah, the fifth of the children, was the lineage genesis of the people who are known as Jews. But as we have many of our Rastafarian brothers who identify as the 12 tribes of Israel, noting the oneness, the camaraderie, and the brotherhood of all of the tribes, these were peaceful African communities side by side with one another. Now look at where it says Judah, the pink part in the middle. And I want you to look very carefully at the next image, and we could keep it on the full screen. Look at this. Now, let's not overload our brains here. Let's start with the one to the extreme left. This is a map of Palestine and Israel after different milestones. Look at the first one on the left. That is Palestine in 1947, prior to the United Nations declaration of Israel as a separate country. The green area is Palestine. The white dots that you're seeing were land settlements and grants that were given by the British government to Jewish individuals, business investors, farmers, entrepreneurs, who were given land by the British, who had taken control of Palestine after World War I. And they started to slowly but surely set up these little establishments, towns, and villages for Jewish people. There was no Israel up to that point. But something very interesting happened in the build-up to 1947. And that is, the Jews would acquire this land in Palestine, and naturally there will be conflict. So the British government decided to withhold temporarily the granting of land in Palestine to European Jews, and this caused an outrage among the European Jews, and they started a series of acts of terrorism. Not terrorism in the Middle East, terrorism in and that the Palestinians had, which, remember, was the land of Judah and the 12 tribes of Israel. Because of their displeasure with the British government, they started sending letter bombs to British members of parliament. They even killed a police officer and booby-trapped his body, hung him up on a lamppost, so that when they went to take him down, they detonated a bomb. So much terrorism in England. And then it got to the point where the British government said, we cannot take any more of this. We're handing it over to the United Nations. Now, let's go back on the full screen and look at the second image. This was from 1947 onwards. This here is the land that the United Nations, with the backing of the United Kingdom and the United States of America, approved for the European Jews to take from Palestine. And then Palestine was divided into two sectors. On the left, that is the Gaza Strip. And on the right, the other green patch, that is the West Bank. And you also have further up the Golan Heights. Then, around 1963 to 1973, 1967 to 1973, we had the Six-Day War. You had more conflict. And this was a time that was beneficial to Trinidad and Tobago's economy. There was this oil boom. The price of oil skyrocketed. And Trinidad and Tobago became prosperous during that time. But this was as a result of a crisis in the Middle East. Look at image number 3. There's conflict, there's war. Look at how small the Gaza Strip got. And even the West Bank got smaller. But the Gaza Strip, that area that is under massive bombardment today. And then look at the fourth image to your extreme right. And as you can see, Israel continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The region allotted to Palestine, in particular the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, you'll notice the Golan Heights are completely gone. But the Gaza Strip getting smaller and smaller, the West Bank getting smaller and smaller. And in the fourth image, not only is the Gaza Strip so tiny, but the West Bank looks like dots. And this is because there are checkpoints, military posts, concentration camps, open-air prisons where the Palestinian people are living in. And then, of course, after decades of oppression, decades of being interned, imprisoned, persecuted, shot at, having rockets and missiles fired at them, we saw the reaction the other day with the 1,700 dead, and then we understand that there have been at least 7,000 Palestinians killed, and we could only call it revenge since then.